started sitting in at lunch counters. And I knew that as they were sitting in, they were really standing up for the best in the American dream, taking the whole nation back to those great wells of democracy, which were dug deep by the founding fathers in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. When we decided to take a ride for freedom and ended segregation in interstate travel.
When I think about the struggles of the 1960s during the freedom rides and segregation and everything that was happening, particularly in the South, it was something that I would see every single night on my TV growing up as a child. And I'd hear my parents talk about when was this ever going to end. And I think about Martin Luther King and the bravery that it took for someone of that young age, he only died at 39, to be able to lead an entire march and galvanize millions of people.
I read sometimes Martin Luther King, some of his quotes, and listen to the I Have a Dream speech, and I think about how far we have come, but we still have a long way to go. So I'm thankful that we did have someone like Martin Luther King to instill the hope in us that we sometimes think that we don't have.
Learning about his civil politics outside of just race, but he was really more of a revolutionary about people at a broader scale, and I'm still learning that now.
So for me, it's a time to honor Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy, but also think about what ordinary people have done for civil rights and what we as ordinary people, at least me, can do, in the present day to push that forward.
But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. So just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around.
When people celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday, they should be remembering someone who brought peace, the message of peace.
He was doing God's work. He was doing it in an extremely difficult time.
When I think about Martin Luther King Jr., I think about someone who was so young and so brave. He really wasn't that much older than I am now when he started this movement that would go on to change the world. And right now we're kind of living in crazy times as well, with a lot of turmoil, and to think about me standing up and leading a movement of that volume at the age I am now is just kind of impossible to imagine.
Yeah, I didn't understand where we were. It took me years before I kind of understood what all that meant, and I'm glad that we're still trying to reach the mountaintop, as it were, as Dr. Martin Luther King put it. We do have a long way to go, but there are still people who are trying to carry that dream forward, and I think I'm glad for those emotions to know that that I felt that way and I got to experience that.
I think it's important to understand, as a legacy of Martin Luther King Jr., that he was an extraordinary person doing amazing things, but we can't leave the work of this nation, the work of equity, solely on the shoulders of the extraordinary. As ordinary people, we have to work hard to move the needle.
The nation is sick. Trouble is in the land, confusion all around. That's a strange statement. But I know somehow that only when it is dark enough can you see the stars. see God working in this period of the 20th century in a way that men in some strange way are responding. Something is happening in our world. The masses of people are rising up, and wherever they are assembled today, whether they are in Johannesburg, South Africa, Nairobi, Kenya, Accra, Ghana, New York City, Atlanta, Georgia, Jackson, Mississippi, or Memphis, Tennessee, the cry is always the same: we want to be free.
I think about the education that we don't give folks. We don't tell them of that perspective. And I think about how important that is to this moment when we're dealing with, you know, not just our deep race issues in this country, but our, like, what's the word? Like our civil issues, are like the income inequality, the way we treat people who don't have the means themselves, and how we, you know, like our society has so many problems that he was talking about directly at that time.
The 15-year-old seeing images of dogs biting people when they were marching peacefully, and people being beaten with batons, and hoses being put, you know, fire hoses on people. And I was wondering, you know, what in the world? Why do people treat each other like that? I didn't understand. And now, as an adult, we're still struggling for civil rights.
Dr. King's birthday, his legacy, the Martin Luther King Day, should be a day of celebration in prayer, love, and unity. Not just the breakfasts that we have, not just the imitation of a march, but it should be the dream that he tried to bring before us. And those who have labored, those who have suffered so much, we should remember what he was trying to give us, and we should become a better people.
At the Stoutsburg Sauerland African American Museum, we invite you to join us in creating the spaces, opening the conversation, having conversations where we disagree with one another, and we are brave enough and trusting enough to know that we can find solutions if we roll up our sleeves and do the work. We invite you to join us to build on the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr.
We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land.